Welcome to Boundless Pursuit, a weekly podcast providing motivation, entertainment, and education to anglers and outdoorsmen. I hope that the stories you'll find here will encourage you to chase your passion more fervently, to open your mind to new opportunities and perspectives. Your engagement and feedback is critical to the growth of this show, and I would love to hear your suggestions on topics or potential guests. You can reach me at boundlesspursuitfishing@gmail.com or at my website, www.boundless-pursuit.com. That's where you'll find all related articles, media, and merchandise. Please remember, the show will gain traction from your support. Be sure to like, comment, and share this podcast to your friends and connections. I'm your host, David Graham. Now let's get on to today's episode. Today's guest is somebody that really embodies the spirit of the Florida man, and he's not even originally from this state. Dilan Ekmark moved to Florida almost entirely because of the diverse fishing scene that we have. It's something that I can relate to because I did pretty much the same thing. And he wasted absolutely no time setting his sights on targeted species and experiences, knocking out almost everything that this state has to offer in saltwater and freshwater. And what I love about Dilan, he favors the use of a canoe, where despite the limited room to maneuver, the horsepower, the electronics, he still routinely catches man-sized tarpon, goliath grouper, sharks, and all kinds of monster fish. And his approach to fishing out of something as humble as a canoe or simply going it on foot should be motivating to budget anglers who still want a piece of that kind of action. And in his new home waters, he's chasing all the typical inshore and nearshore species in saltwater like tarpon, redfish, snook, triple tail, sea trout, all of those things. And in Florida's diverse freshwater scene, he's already conquered the whole gamut of native and non-native exotic species. And his experience as an angler has grown and evolved on this new home front to more ambitious endeavors far from home. And we talk about his recent trip to British Columbia, chasing the fabled monster white sturgeon of the Fraser River, fish in excess of 10 feet long. We talk future plans and dream trips. And we talk about passions aside from fishing altogether, because Dilan is also part of the state's python program, where he's taken an active role in the control of Florida's invasive Burmese python population. And we just talk about his overall passion for pursuing and studying different kinds of reptiles and wildlife in general. And this is a dude that has traveled out of country into remote jungle, intentionally separating himself from what's known and what's familiar, all in the pursuit of different experiences in the wild. He's an angler, he's a reptile enthusiast, he's a hunter, he's just a jack of all trades wild. This is Dilan Ekmark. I don't have like a definitive starting point on these things. We just begin talking, but you know, I decide what's the most interesting point to begin the video. But anyway, you're sitting in an interesting spot. That's part of the fun of doing these podcasts, is like snooping in people's houses.
Yes,
See what they have in the background. Yeah, you know, some people have some interesting stuff going on. There's like unplanned cameos in the background. You know, naked person walks by. I'm like, oh, got it,
dude. If we have an unplanned cameo in my background, you're gonna see me literally jumping out of my seat because it means like a 10-foot snake's loose.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was about to say. So anybody who's only listening, I got Dilan Ekmark here, who's a jack of all things Florida man, a jack of all trades and all things Florida man. From the giant fish, the different kinds of fish, the reptiles, the wildlife. I've been a fan of seeing your stuff for a while now, and even had the pleasure of joining you on one of these reptile hunts. But I see the background. That was the first thing I thought. I'm like, man, if this dude has a cameo, I don't even want to know what's going to pop out at him.
No telling, especially.
The guy's
especially
got,
here.
how many of those trays back there, the gray ones, have something in them? Is that just where the food is, or is that all?
Bro, every single one. This room, as we sit here, has like 105 snakes in it, maybe.
That must be one of the friendly ones because you just willy-nilly opened it. I hope they're labeled.
Yeah, these ones I'm not too worried about.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, but that's what pretty much all these tubs are filled with, something similar to this. So
oh, geez.
They like it though, man. That's the way they like to live.
He seemed happy. He didn't go for your
No,
eyeballs or your throat just then. But
if you wanted to see me get physically assaulted by a snake, I've got many in here that would just tear my ass up. But
yeah,
I try not to.
some of them more well behaved than others. Well, that's awesome. I try to like not get too distracted by that and stay as on topic as I got. I'm notorious for just meandering through these conversations, trying to stay on topic. Ultimately, this is a fishing podcast, and dude, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
You're a guy who I think you got to Florida a little bit before I did. Maybe what year did you land in Florida? What year did you?
I landed in Florida the end of November 2019.
Okay, yeah. So I
Yeah.
came, man, maybe the same year. When did I get here? Around the same time. Oh, that's
It
all I
seems
know.
like a lifetime ago. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's only been like 3 years and some change.
Well, the difference is you, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later. I want to get into the Florida stuff. I'm going to kind of start with some other stuff, but like,
Sure.
like I don't know how you did it. It's like you just nailed all of like the Florida bucket list like immediately. So like, I want to get into like some of how you pulled it off, the planning that went involved in that. But I think it's best to start with what's probably most fresh on your mind from a fishing standpoint, and what's most eye-catching from your Instagram page. And that's the recent trip that you took. You went to British Columbia, right?
Oh, yeah, dude. The sturgeon trip, bro.
The sturgeon trip. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Now I've done the white sturgeon thing, but you went to like the spot for these fish.
Yeah.
So tell me how the trip came together, what the planning process, like, was there a connection there? Like, tell me about this sturgeon trip.
So, it was kind of last year was a hard year. I have a friend, his name's Michael. He's my best friend my entire life. His dad passed away last year, and it hit us all really hard. But our entire lives, like Michael's dream fish, has been a giant sturgeon. Like I bring him down here, dude, and we'll go catch 150-pound tarpon and stuff. And it's cool, but it's like a week later, I'm hearing about sturgeon again, like ridiculous. So I decided like this is the year we go. And I knew a guy who we just kind of follow each other on Instagram. His name's Colby McKenzie, and he's a guide, and he lives up there. And I was like, man, I want to come do this. I don't know if I'm ever going to come back or if I'll have time because there's so much going on. I was like, so I'm going to do it right. Like, I want to fish for 4 days. Like, let's just go. And he was into it. So, I mean, we flew up there, and it was just the place is amazing. It's so funny. Like if you look at it on a map from where you and I live, like you could not physically get further
away. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it took me a day and a half to get there. It's literally from one corner to the other. And as all good fishing trips go, we get there, we go out the next morning, and it's like 35 degrees and just like blowing sideways rain, just absolute shit. So first day we caught like 2 sturgeon, and they were like 7-footers. And I let Michael reel them both in. I'm like, cool, man. Like, worst comes to worst. We came up here. We did it. You caught your fish. And then we proceeded to just, I'm honestly, if you see me hunched over, it's almost, I don't know what, like a month later, my back is still messed up. I caught 36 sturgeon over 7 feet in 3 days.
Oh my gosh. That is a grand slam.
And Michael caught like at least, we caught 2 over 10. We caught probably a dozen 9-footers. I mean, it was just, and we doubled up so many times. And literally the one time we doubled up, I'm fighting a fish. He gets on. You're allowed to fish 1 rod per person. So it's me, Michael, and then the guide Colby. He's allowed to technically have a rod too. So we have a 3rd rod, and I'm like, yo, reel that rod up. We got to get the line out the way. As we're reeling the bait up, it gets crushed again by a giant. So literally we had to bring these 2 fish in, unhook them, and then deal with this. It was just like pure madness. And then he called me like 2 days after we got home and was like, man, I don't know what happened, but the bites, like, I've had to cancel trips. So I don't know. Sometimes you just get lucky.
Oh, because that's what I was wondering. I'm like, is that like normal numbers? Like, that's outrageous.
No, I mean, based on what he's telling me, like the size is normal. I mean, catching an 8 to 9 foot, 10-foot sturgeon, like that happens, pretty much daily. But you're talking maybe like 2 to 4 fish if it's a good day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, that is like, I feel like that is like the purest experience of sturgeon fishing. And I think a lot of it is like the all-encompassing experience because obviously the fish, they get bigger. Yeah. There's more of them, but it's also like the topography of that area. I'm assuming you're around like the Chilliwack area of the Fraser River.
Yep.
I mean, because like you got mountains. The mountains, the gorges, like that's big, scary water too. Like I've seen the videos. I'm like, ooh, that's like intimidating looking water.
I'm gonna be honest with you. It's like, so area we were fishing was anywhere between like 40 and 80 feet deep. It's fast. It's fast. Like he uses like 24-ounce weights. I mean, big chunks of lead. So it's kind of funny too, because it's like the most simple style of fishing, but it's difficult, and there's a lot of nuance to it, because you're just running a nylon leader to a big sharpened barbless circle hook with a giant freaking weight and some bait. Like, it's as simple as it gets. But the leader length, I guess, makes a difference. The way the weight sits makes a difference. Whether on this spot we're using square weights, or this spot we're using round weights, and then the type of bait. Okay, if they're in the lower Fraser, they won't eat this. But if you go in the upper Fraser, they won't touch it. They won't. I mean, so it's like, it's just kind of wild to see something that on paper it's like, I'm gonna chuck bait out, some stinky bait, and catch a fish that eats by smelling. But in reality, it's a lot more difficult than that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure there's parallels between, what my experience was and what yours was, but it's also just like worlds apart, because, you got a landlocked population in Idaho, and then you have like the pure strain up there that are, I'm guessing.
Still jealous though, man. I mean, like, you and I are the same way. And if I can do it by paddlecraft, I'm doing it by paddlecraft. I promise you, if that river was paddleable and fishable, I'd have been trying to do it out of a kayak.
Yeah.
I like doing land-based. So watching you catch that giant sturgeon in the pictures you got, like land-based, man, like, I was extremely jealous. That was freaking awesome.
Well, we tried the kayak thing, and shout out to the guy that helped me. It was sort of the same thing. Like, you meet these people through another person organically, because just other passionate fishermen, like real fishermen. And this guy, Steve Carroll, who I'm trying to get on the podcast. I got to get him on here, but he's a busy man. But he's sort of like pioneered or certainly put on the map the kayak fishing for sturgeon scene out there in Idaho, which is like wild. The guy's got wild videos of these 9-foot sturgeon jumping beside the kayak. It's like that thing. Yeah, but there's also something, just whether you're in a boat or not, like when you're around that environment where the nature's so powerful. It's like, I don't know, man. I have gone way down the rabbit hole of spending countless hours watching the videos of the Fraser River sturgeon. It's just like, man, that is like the purest experience. The big cascading cliffs coming down, and like the mist coming off of it. And
I saw black bears. All I was missing was a grizzly. That's like the only thing I was like, there's a grizzly going through the background, man. Like, this is like the screensaver fishing trip. But it's kind of funny. I think I'm biased. I'm harder to please living in Florida, because, if you got a guy who lives in the Midwest and he catches trout and stuff, like catching a sturgeon, he's gonna remember, like, that's like the biggest thing he's ever done.
Yeah.
We catch giant fish every day. So I was under the assumption that, like, this would be cool. I catch some big fish, get some neat, like, see just the whole experience. But like, maybe the fish wasn't gonna, blow my socks off. But some of the sturgeon absolutely kicked me in the dick. Like, they fight. So they fight way harder than I expected. And I show up, and the guy's got Avet reels and Phoenix rods, and I'm like, oh my, like, I feel like I'm at home. I feel like I'm grouper fishing. Yeah. And I was like, no harness, no nothing, just like a rubber butt or like a little fight plate. Like, we're gonna horse these things. And I mean, I did it that way for every single one. But man, there was a couple of them that if I could have cut the line, tapped out, I would have. Like, just
dude. That's what I was going to ask, because you're so accustomed, and we'll get into like something, obviously the Florida fish that you get with the Goliath, the fish that have some stature to them, like the Goliaths that you catch, and the tarpon, and obviously you caught giant sharks and stuff. But I was wondering, obviously, saltwater fish they're always going to be more powerful than a freshwater fish, but I was curious, like, your impression of the sturgeon. Obviously there's nothing to compare them against in freshwater. They're just too big.
I mean, in my brain at this point, I'm just considering them a saltwater fish on the Fraser, at least, because like that's there's not a lot, like, they fight just like a big shark, man. I mean, and not like a lemon or something that's gonna just roll around. Like, dude, they were peeling drag. I mean, you're in 100 feet of water, so you're starting your battle at 100 feet of line minimum.
Yeah.
You get them up to the boat and think you have them beat. They'd get one look at the daylight and they'd peel 200-300 yards of line with just nothing. You just crying. There's nothing you can do about it.
Oh,
Just
I know.
you know,
Well,
it was
what's amazing too is when you think of a fish that big, like, and that just that kind of shoulders behind it, and then mine didn't jump. I don't know if it's something to do with being on land. I really wanted to see mine jump, but the idea that a fish like that would leave the water's another thing.
they
Like
do. They do. The biggest one we caught, it was over 10 foot. I was fighting it. And the other rod was going off and it was peeling line. And I was like, oh, that's a bigger fish. I got to get this one in. So I start thinking it's like a 7-8 foot fish. I'm really just, I'm fighting it not the way I would fight a fish I want to take pictures of.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. You're just ripping it, pulling up, reeling down as fast as you can. And all of a sudden I'm like, it's come up to the boat and this thing jumps directly behind the boat and like 2/3 of its body came out the water and we all just went silent.
Yeah.
And Colby immediately, because we were anchored, and Colby immediately, I just hear the anchor chain coming up. He's like, no, we gotta go. Like screw all this other shit. Like we gotta focus on this fish. And then it got real. And that was like probably a 35-40 minute fight. And after that point, I mean, those big sturgeon, even the 7-footers, man, I mean, I gained a lot of respect for them. I always think I'm huge into reptiles, anything prehistoric. Like I just think they're the coolest thing ever. But after fighting one, I'm like, these guys who talk about them not fighting hard, I don't know what they're basing it off of, because I fight some pretty ridiculous stuff and they're up there for me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I don't know, man. It's hard to not be impressed by, again, like you said, the prehistoric thing. It was a fish that left an immediate impression on me. It was funny, like when I hooked mine, and you mentioned this too, in the back of my mind, I think it was as close as I've ever come to asking for help on the rod. I was like, I can't do it. I cannot ask for help. I can't be that guy. But I got like, it got bad. And I was like, if this thing comes up and I ask for help and it's only like a 7-foot fish, I'm going to look so, because I have no idea. I don't know what to measure it off of. Like, it's the first one. Well, it's the second one I'd ever caught. I don't have enough experience to know what I'm dealing with. I'm like, do they really fight this hard? Or like, do I actually have a giant? I'm like, so I had no idea. So I was like, I just stayed quiet. I suffered in silence. But yeah, man, I was done after one. I can't imagine catching that many. I was like, I'm out of here. I'm finished.
The first day I didn't even fight a fish. So I was like, okay. But Michael was like, man, they fight hard. And it looked like they fought hard. And that second day, after catching like a dozen of them, I got out of bed the third morning and was like, I couldn't even stand up straight. I was like, oh, this is going to be a really long day. Like, I told Michael right off the bat, I'm like, yeah, man, like you get the first fish. And then the second fish came like less than 3 minutes later. And I was like, all right, well, so it's nice though. Like, I mean, how many trips do you get to go on where you're in physical pain from catching fish? Like,
I know.
Yeah.
Usually all my fishing problems are usually the opposite of that, but you manage to come away with like phenomenal photos too. Like, I always appreciate somebody that, like, obviously you want to be smart with them. I feel like they're a pretty photo easy fish though. It's not like a tarpon that's like you don't have time to be screwing around. It's like I mean, mine put up a little bit of a fight when, like, you probably saw the same thing I did, where when they're upside down, they're just like out. It's like
done.
It's like, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty convenient, man. Mine, as soon as I rolled it over though, it was like it came back on. It was like every slow move of its head was just like it was moving my whole. I mean, I weigh 195 pounds. It was just moving me out of the way like I wasn't there. I was like, oh my god.
When we got
solid muscle
in the shallows, that like you get an opportunity to get a nice picture of them because they kind of like sat still.
Yeah.
But unlike the tarpon, so there's a revive. I think they just kind of like almost self-revive, because they would get to a point where like your photo op's done. Like whether you want to get more photos or not, the fish is done and it's going to go where it wants to go.
Yeah.
And they have a bunch of rules up there about not being able to take the head out of the water and stuff. I got one super cool photo where, but by the way, the water was like fucking ice cold. It was freezing.
Yeah.
But I went out to like chest deep and I had the fish like up on my chest under my chin. And you can tell like the head is like as wide as my shoulders. I'm 6'1". I'm a big guy. It was just like, you can't do that with a shark or something because you're gonna get tore up. But I was like, man, this is like the moment,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It was the same thing. I was so like pooped at the end of mine as like I knew that there's such an uncertainty in those kind of trips. Like, when is the next time I'm going to be able to experience something like that? So even though I was like totally done and tired, I'm like, I know I've got to get a few memorable shots and then send this thing out. But yeah, dude, it's crazy fish. It's like, I wanted to know like your experience of it, and you got even big. Mine was big for Idaho standards, but you got to tangle with the real giants, and I was like, damn.
The Fraser's just full of them, man. Like, I know they come in waves and they're following the salmon. But we'd be anchored up fishing, and even though like we're catching fish, you're watching fish just jump like around you. Like you're almost like you're salmon fishing, but they're 8-9 foot long fish just going airborne all around you.
Yeah.
Like I imagine it's probably like I've seen the videos. You've seen them, like the Florida sturgeon where people are just boating and get taken out. Like it definitely had that kind of feeling to it.
Yeah, that's terrifying. No, ours we would see a few of them almost like roll. It's it's probably a little bit of a different environment, but all I know is like I was surprised by how savvy they were. Some fish like they'll take and they'll fight against the current, like they'll swim upriver. Mine put the current behind its shoulders and started heading downriver. I'm like, this is bad. I got spin gear. I'm like, I'm not stopping this fish. Yep. But yeah,
there's a couple of them. Like, so we obviously our guide Colby's got really good side scan and everything. We'd be fighting a fish, and we'd be you pull up the anchor on a big fish and you're floating with them down the current, and he'd be looking at that side scan and he'd be like, oh, we got a big tree up here like 80 feet to our right, and sure as shit, man, those fish just had like they're really like they're looking for structure when they're hooked for sure. And if maybe it's just that area, maybe it doesn't happen in other areas, but that area for sure, if there's structure on the bottom, they're trying to get under it, and you can feel it. And like, we did lose a couple in the trees because like they find it, they're like, oh, yeah, because that area is big on logging. So I think there's a lot of tree tops on the bottom, and it's they go right for it.
Oh yeah,
they're smart fish. They're very smart fish.
Yeah, and even if it's not that, there's like underwater like canyons and rock edges and stuff. That's what we were contending with too. But yeah, man, I don't know.
You can't get on top of them because you're on from the bank. So if there's a ledge, you're gonna be rubbing on it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, oh yeah. But yeah, dude, I love how you describe kind of like the impulsivity of the trip, though. It's like, I would love to see more people doing that. Like, it just comes a point in time where you have to just stop talking about these trips and be like, you know what, like the time is now. Yeah. And it's like you hear motivational speakers that like say that stuff. I'm like, okay, jackass, like, oh, just go and do it. But it's like all the best trips I've ever been on probably had the least amount of planning. It's like I have a little window here. Nothing else to do. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. Because that's kind of how
you just gotta go. I've done a lot of trips, both hunting and fishing. And even some of my like worst trips, like hunting trips where I didn't fill a tag or something like that, I don't regret any of them. Like I wish and one of the things that I always harp on, man, I know you do too, is like it's okay to hire a guide. It's okay to meet up with people in the area to help out and stuff like that. But like there's something to be said about taking some initiative yourself. Like, oh yeah, some of the stuff I do, like I go out bow hunting in Arizona every year with one of my friends. We just pull tags and go, man. Like we're just gonna go and we're gonna figure it out, and I feel like sometimes even if you don't get the success that like in your brain, every trip you're thinking, I want that monster fish, I want that big deer, but like last time we went, we suffered in the desert for 7 days and shot a spiked mule deer. And I've killed plenty of big whitetails. I think I was more hyped over that mule deer than anything else I've ever shot. Like that was like the hell yeah, we came out here, we struggled, we did it.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's a lot of fishing trips that you just gotta go, man. Like you just gotta do it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's like part of it's because I'm just a cheap bastard. Well, I don't ever take guides, but you want to support us at least. Like if I'm going to go with a guide, I want to find somebody that's like, they're working. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to make it. Not I
cannot stand tourist guides.
Yeah,
I'll never say a bad word about them because they're fishermen and they're working. But man, like. The idea of like, oh, we're going to go out, we're going to have a good day, we're going to see some stuff, we're going to catch some fish. If I'm hiring a guide, like I'm showing up at the boat, I'm ready to work all day.
Right.
And I'm expecting the same thing.
Yeah. And you want to support those guys that are out there grinding like that to a point. But obviously, like you're probably more like me. It's like if I fail or when I fail, I want to know that it was like on me. Like I want to own the failure. I don't want there to be any part of my mind that we didn't get it done because I was using someone else's rig, or we didn't get it done because I didn't get to pick where I was at. Like that eats away at my conscience. Like I have lost big fish because I was on somebody else's gear and the rig failed. It could have been me, but I'll never know.
You'll never know. Yeah.
Because my fingerprints weren't on every element of what went into catching the fish. So it's like if I fail, I can eat my failure a lot better than I can eat shared failure, I guess, if that makes sense.
That's actually the first fishing trip I've ever taken where I hired a boat guide. That's like, because I mean I do everything by paddlecraft. There's not if I'm fishing with someone else, it's because it's someone I know in the area who catches fish. Like we're just going out as homies. Because there's not a lot of people out there doing stuff out of canoes and kayaks commercially, anyways. So.
No kidding. Well, I consider the sturgeon thing, like, it always interests me to see guys, especially ones that traveled to go do it. I mean, it's one thing, you get your guys that are just in the culture of sturgeon fishing because that's in their backyard. But it's like, it's one of those fish that like the American angler should like experience. It's just like a no-brainer species. It's like, you have like these pillar fish, I feel like, on the continent. And it's like, and I say this in a lot of the different episodes, where it's like, if you're one of those anglers that wants to like, have some diversity in your experience, you want to catch like the most beautiful fish. You want to catch the most difficult fish. You want to catch like, I don't know, the fastest. You want to catch whatever. But obviously, like, one of the first categories that any angler is going to ask is what gets the biggest? So it's like, it just makes sense that everybody should have that one on the list to go do. And I feel like it's like a low hanging fruit. I mean, it's like, it's within reach for people of a lot of different skill levels.
It's affordable. It's super affordable too. Like, a whole day of fishing in British Columbia costs what it would be for like a half day on the flats here. Like, it's pretty, it's so well managed. I don't know if it is the same way in Idaho, but they take like the people who fish for those fish up there. Like, you see the videos all the time of people just like mercilessly manhandling tarpon, but they don't treat the fish up there like that. Like, they love those fish. They take care of them, and there's a lot of them. I mean, it's a really good, sustainable fit. Like, I fully support it. Like, that's definitely one of the fisheries that I'm like, I have no problem hiring a guide, putting money in, like, booking the hotels, fueling the economy to go catch the fish, because they really take good care of it.
Yeah. I think it's more of a beloved fish. I mean, it makes sense. It's good that it's earned that status. It's, you got other prehistoric giants that haven't had that fortune, like, the shit that alligator gar have gone through.
Oh, horrible, dude.
Which I think is changing. It's like, I feel like they have made the turn, and like they've got a lot of people championing them, and a lot of people, like, you'll see a lot about, like, you go on to social media and see piles of dead 7-foot alligator gar. The comment section is full of, maybe Karens and stuff, but like, people don't like that stuff. People do not like that.
I've always wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the bow fishing for the alligator gar?
I am not one of the guys that's staunchly anti-bow fishing. That's like, that's always the battleground with anybody that loves gar. And, some of the other fish that I like are like non-traditional or trash, called trash fish. I don't mind bow fishing because bow fishing is just an activity. It's like, that's like saying, how do you feel about guns in the wake of like some idiot that abuses firearms? It's like, well, I'm not anti-Second Amendment. I'm not anti the weapon. Bow fishing in and of itself is just like the act of harvesting game with a bow and arrow. It's awesome. I would bow fish in certain circumstances if it was like to harvest food, because it's like, it's tribal. It's sort of like, I don't know, man. There's some cool elements to it, but like anything else, it's just been unfortunately like compromised and saturated with bad actors. And when they do the wrong thing, it just looks really, really bad.
Horrible.
It looks bad.
I love the bowfish. I do. I don't do it so much anymore, but I used to do a lot of bow fishing. And when I first moved down here, man, I used to go out and shoot a bunch of tilapia and stuff. It is a ton of fun.
Yeah.
There's just something about the alligator gar where I'm like, man, first of all, it's not difficult to hit a 7-foot fish with a bow. I mean, that's about as easy as it gets.
Yeah.
And secondly, like, that's just one of those species that I feel like that shouldn't be allowed on. I mean, that's an ancient animal that's just been persecuted forever, and the numbers aren't getting any better. And I don't know. It's crazy to me that's still allowed.
It's one of those things where it's like a lot of common sense goes into like, okay, here's a fish that takes 10 years to reach sexual maturity. Like they cannot keep up to pressure. It's not like it is not comparable to other species of fish that like, you know, you can go out and shoot 100 million tilapia tomorrow and make no dent. Nothing will happen. Alligator gar, like they are susceptible to different kinds of pressure. It's like habitat encroachment. Like, and then on top of the fact, like here's a fish that takes a decade to get to the point where it's able to spawn. Then they have such specific like environmental like needs to spawn. Like it is a species that will not spawn unless the river floods. There has to be a flood or they won't spawn because they have to get into flooded vegetation. And there's periods of drought out there in like areas like Texas where, you know, it may be 3 years before the river gets at a level where they can spill off into the cow pastures and spill off into whatever to spawn. So like on top of, you know, they have these spawn cycles. It's kind of like there's classes of fish where if you go in there and mow down like what I don't like is when they go into, you know, these flooded fields and they start mowing down the spawning groups. I don't know if you've seen these videos online where
I have. It's horrible.
When alligator gar are spawning, you can walk up and poke them in the forehead. They just sit there. They are in a trance. They don't care that you're there. You can literally you could grab them. So it's like there's no sport to it. Totally like susceptible to being just annihilated. And then you're wiping out massive critical generations of like genetics that you need. So it's like the trophy, like the targeting of the trophy size fish gets at me a little bit. The practice of shooting spawners gets at me in a little bit. But, you know, I think most of the states are coming around to realizing, all right, you know, we need to put like a one fish per person per day, you know, common sense stuff. That's a good start. It used to be you could go out there. You used to be able to just go shoot 100. You used to be able to fill up the boat. Didn't matter. But
I don't understand why they don't treat it more like big game hunting. Like with other fish, it doesn't matter because you're not harvesting them. But if you're going to bowfish a 7-foot alligator gar, why don't they offer a tag? It doesn't even have to be expensive.
Yeah.
But if they do it on like a tag basis, then somebody can't just go out and kill 30 of them. But also, then they actually are going to get a real number of what's being harvested, right? Because like now there's a way to track it.
Yeah, that's a tough battle because like when you come before a committee, they need to see like data. Like the person that has no dog in the fight, that's like the, you know, the third party that doesn't lean one way or the next, that has two opposing parties. They go, all right, well, show me the data. Show me the numbers and the science. And unfortunately, it's not a species of fish that has a lot of historical data. Like there's just never been big campaigns to collect data on the species of fish. They just have never done it. So it's like you really can't dig deep into the archives to say, here is how the populations have been affected by X, Y, and Z. It's just not, and it's just not enough to stand there and give an emotion-based argument. Well, it's just wrong.
Right.
Well, it hurts. You can't win. You cannot win. So it's like, but you know, there are guys out there right now. Like there's guys, you know, that are. There's a few that are really campaigning and fighting hard for it, that are collecting that data. But I don't know. It's a long one, but at least they've already started. Like they've already started putting in, like you can't just go out there and kill them all. I think in Louisiana, I don't know Louisiana right now. Like Texas, you can only shoot like one fish per day that's over like 6 foot or something to that effect. But in like Louisiana, I think you can still harvest whatever you want to harvest. But
yeah.
I don't know, man. That's an interesting topic, but we'll never win by just standing on the sidelines and crying and saying, ban it, banish bow fishing. You should ban bow fishing. I will always take that stance. Like, man, you can't be crazy. You can't take extreme sides or no one will hear your argument. You can't. I don't like the idea of banning things because once you open that door, what you love to do might be next. Because somebody could say hook and line fishing is animal cruelty. It inflicts pain. It is unethical to do catch and release fishing. The mortality rate of some of these fish being released, like, you know, you don't want to open that door.
Do you remember when they did that a couple years ago for the land-based shark fishing?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's one that's already been banned at certain beaches for different reasons. I don't even know why. It's you know, uh, I don't know how many of them are banned in Florida, but like my home state is South Carolina. You can't do it in Hilton Head. You can't do it in Myrtle Beach. It is illegal. You can't do it. But it's
I learned that one firsthand because I tried to do it in Hilton Head and I got a nice ticket. So
yeah. Well, Hilton Head.
I didn't.
Hilton
I
Head.
was like, "What do you mean I can't fish for?" Like
That's sad
they
because Hilton Head has got some giant sharks.
they have, yeah. There's a reason for it. It's just unfortunate that the reasons you can't fish for them have nothing to do with the sharks itself. It's just tourism aspect.
Yeah. But, well, that's been a common theme. I've tried to touch on the land-based shark fishing quite a bit because that's a culture of fishing where it's like, man, your sport is like teetering on the edge. Like if you get one idiot out there making a wrong move and you got sharks washing up or somebody catching a big shark in broad daylight around a bunch of kids, it just like, you can make a narrative look real bad with one of these. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah. And that's the unfortunate part, man. Like I see those videos of dudes like reeling in tiger sharks and stuff in the middle of the day, like telling surfers to get out the water while they're reeling it in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, man. Like,
yeah,
I love a good look.
I love land-based shark fishing. I've dabbled in it a little bit, but I wouldn't even consider myself one of those guys. I'm kind of like on the sidelines, and I dip my toes in that world a little bit every now and then. But I know better than to do that. You just can't. You can't be stupid with it. But
I get these waves because I'm at the core. I'm just lazy. But land-based shark fishing is so much work. It's so much work, and I won't do it for a really long time, and then I'll just get this idea in my head of like, man, I haven't caught a big shark in forever. And then you go out and you catch nothing, and then it lights that fire, and you're like, all right, well now I'm going every free day I get until I get one, and then I catch one, and then 6 months go by, and then I'm like, I want to do this again.
Yeah.
Or like, it's always funny to me too. I don't know if you get this, but when family and friends come in from like out of town, especially like people who not hardcore fishermen, my friends who like they're outdoors, they want to fish. No one ever comes to me and's like, I want to catch triple tail, or like I want to catch like both. They're like, nah, I want to catch a shark. And I'm like, all right, well, sure.
Yeah.
Makes you happy, we'll catch shark.
Yeah, I've had my dad, my brothers come. But it's also an easy one. It's like, if you want to entertain an out of state person with a big fish, that's it's like a taboo thing. Oh, it's a shark. They're man eaters. It's like you get somebody from the interior states. It's interesting to get in the water and see a shark. But I kind of get it. I'm the same way though. It's like I'll catch one or two a year, and like, well, I mean, they're all basically the same thing. I'm like, I need variety, but yeah, I just don't do it also because I'm like, I go alone. I'm like, heaven forbid something that's too big for me to handle. Like, you need to move quickly, and it's like hard to do it when you're by yourself. But
I have the best, probably the best story you've ever heard of shark fishing alone. So I went out one night. This is like 3 years ago probably, and I was like, all right, I want to shark fish. Nobody could go with me. It was like a weekday, so I just took one rod. You know how you go to the beach, set up your chairs, set up your cooler, put the rod in, you got to paddle it out. Well, what I always do is have someone stand on the beach with a headlamp, so I know I can look back and make sure I'm going straight. But this particular beach, I didn't need it because I was A, alone, and B, there were hotels behind it.
Yeah.
So I didn't even have a headlamp on, or I didn't even have a light with me. I was just paddling out there in the dark, and I'm like 300 and some yards off the beach, and all of a sudden it's like really freaking hard to paddle, and I'm like trying to paddle, and I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, I'm getting frustrated, and I'm thinking like there's a current, so I'm trying to like splash the water and watch the water to see if like it's moving faster, and I couldn't figure it out, so I just dropped the bait and started paddling back in and realized I'd been pulled in like 70 yards. Some guy was walking down the beach and thought my rod was unattended.
Oh my God.
And he saw the line going out, and he thinks he's fighting like a freaking great white or something. And I come paddling back in. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, oh my God, like there was a fish on here. I'm like, no, it was me. Like, I'm like, that's my shit. I'm paddling this out. And we like, it took him a while to realize what was going on. And we kind of laughed about it. I was so confused because he didn't have a flashlight either. So,
somebody abandoned this $1,000 rod and reel setup out here.
Yeah, but it made me think about it though, because I'm like, damn, if I was doing that alone and someone just came and cut my line, like they would just take my stuff and I would never know.
It's always in the back of my mind when I do like a solo paddle out. It's like my fear is always that I'm paddling my rod and reel out to sea.
Yeah,
man, what if my rod like got pulled over somehow? The only times I've had similar things happen, like I paddle out and then like my FG knot or something gets stuck in the guide, and it's like I'm like paddling trying to get it to come through, but I did have a boat come through and cut in behind me one time when I was paddling out. That was a disaster. And
that's like the worst case scenario. Yeah, man. That's bad.
Well, I threw the rig because I knew it was coming. I'm like, oh shit, because I threw the rig over hoping it would get down, but it did not make it down. And so when I was paddling back in, I could hear the drag screaming.
Oh no!
I was like, oh, that's gonna ruin my reel. He's going like 40 miles an hour. And
that's terrible.
Yeah, that was at Big Carlos Pass. So he headed under the bridge, which was nice because as soon as it hit the
pilot snap,
he took all my 200-pound top shot to the prop. But as soon as he got to the braid, it was like gone. So I was so scared that I was going to see my rod get yoinked into the water, never to be seen again. But yeah,
I heard. I know a guy who paddled out a bait and he fell asleep and he forgot to turn his clicker on. And he woke up to no rod and reel.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. I'm sure you can see the drag mark through the sand where it got drug in. So.
I'm sure there's no shortage of those stories, but now we're starting to teeter into more of the Florida stuff. So we'll segue into your experience in Florida. Where are you from originally? You told me before, but I can't remember. Like, how did you end up in Florida? All I know is that you're not from Florida.
No, I'm from Ohio.
Ohio, okay.
I was born and raised in Ohio. I lived there until I was in my 20s. And people don't think of Ohio as a fishing or outdoor state, but it's phenomenal, man. I mean, we have like such good whitetail hunting, good duck hunting. The muskie fishing is like second to none. You're a short drive to like Lake Sinclair. I mean, there's like the muskie fish. I was a huge muskie fisherman. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Steelhead fishing, all, big, small, like some of the biggest smallmouth bass in the world. Like there's such good fishing in Ohio. And I was really blessed that, I did that my whole life. Like it was just like, I straight out the womb, I'm into a deer stand. Like that's just how it was for me. So
yeah,
I didn't know anything different. But gosh, it had to have been like 8 years ago. Kevin Hughes.
Yeah.
So I grew up with Pat, I've known him for, almost 14, 15 years now. I don't know. But we grew up fishing together, and he's like the fishiest human I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
And he moved to Miami, and I used to come down and visit and fish with him. And it took like the first trip I came down here, I was like, oh man, this is the promised land. I gotta get down here. And I am one of those guys, man. I talked about it forever, and it'll be next year will be the year, like we'll get it done. And my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, just got sick and tired of hearing me talk about it. And she just applied for a job down here and got an interview and got hired at a pretty high level. And she was like, all right, well, we're moving. And that was it. We just packed our bags and moved here. And
nice.
I was a firefighter, and Florida doesn't accept fire cards from other states. So you're forced to go back to the academy, which is like 18 months. And then it's a very competitive state to get a job in because they have something here called sunshine tax, which means everybody wants to move here. So the job market can be kind of difficult to get into. And this is pre-COVID, obviously. So even then it was difficult.
Yeah.
So I decided to go back to school to be a nurse. So I went through that whole route. And my first 2 years living in Florida, I was a full-time student, 5 days a week. And I was working like 30 hours a week. And I just didn't sleep. I just fished, around if I had an hour between class, I was fishing. If I had a night off where I didn't have to work, I just fished. And for me, that was like every day was something new and exciting. Like every day was something like I've always dreamt about doing. And I had like this drive to just go out there every day. Like I never had before. Everything was brand new. It was pretty awesome. And I noticed too that, I have friends who move from Florida to other states, and they go to a different state, and they do the same thing. I think it's just like when you move, I'm sure you experience it too. When you moved here, you're like, man, like it's a whole new world.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way too. Cause I don't even have family or anybody down here. I had
nothing.
Yeah. My wife and I got we got a hunch And it's funny, like, you come from these. I was in Arkansas. It's sort of the same thing. It's like, oh, what the hell's in Arkansas? But, I was like right there, like right on the edge, really in the middle of the Ozarks. So it was the same things. It was good fishing, but I don't know. I'm just not really a trout and smallmouth bass guy, especially small ones.
Yeah.
And I got the same thing when I lived in Oklahoma. I lived in Oklahoma. People like, oh, Oklahoma, that would suck. Oklahoma's got phenomenal fishing, great fishing. But yeah, I got to a point where I was just like, you know what? We just need to be impulsive. Got young kids. Disney's out there, beaches, warm weather, amazing fishing. It's a back, on the East Coast, closer to the East Coast where we're originally from. And so I just started carpet bombing the job market in Texas and in Florida. My wife was happy because Florida called first, but it's either Texas or Florida. Oh, yeah, she loves it. We would never move from here. And I have moved them enough in the last 10 years. I don't want to put them through any more moves. But, we like it down here. Even with these storms, we like it down here. So,
yeah, for everyone listening, we never even told them, like, there's an actual hurricane happening. Like, while we're talking.
Yeah. It's like right off the coast right now.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Well, we're not stopping. We're still on schedule.
That's right.
But thank God we have internet service. But yeah, dude, I remember when I found I don't remember when I found your page. I don't remember how I found your page. I just, you find people on Instagram and you can kind of, I don't know. I feel like I can ascertain who's a clown show and who's, somebody that's out there getting after it. And then I had sort of realized that you were new to Florida, but I'm seeing like land-based goliaths, huge sharks, all these tarpon. I'm like, what the hell? Like, and all of the exotics. And then some. And then like some really, really like obscure, rare ones. So I'm like, what was the process for like, how much of it was luck? How much of it was like the game planning going into it? Because you seem like you just like, I don't know if you were like just chop down all these different species, like one after the other. Was that the intention? Like, all right, now I want to catch this fish. Caught it, done. Now I want to get this one. Got it, done. Here's the next one on the list.
Honestly, and I'm always one of those people. I will give credit where credit's due. When I moved down here, Kevin really hooked me up. But Kevin is a madman about one thing and one thing only, and that's flats fishing. Yeah. So we fished the flats all the time for tarpon, and we fished for bonefish, and we fished for permit, which, anyone who lives in Florida or is a serious angler, that's always their top three. So I got very blessed that, like, my second day living in Florida, I caught like a 5-pound bonefish from my kayak. Yeah. And at the time, like, there weren't very many people who were catching bonefish from a kayak. Like, I have a huge bonefish that I literally, like, Kevin was like, we're going here, we're catching bonefish. But he lived here long enough that the whole idea of chasing exotics and goliaths and sharks and stuff like that, it wasn't his interest anymore, which is totally fine. And, he's on a level that I was at times. So I was pretty much on my own. So I realistically I just fudged my way through it, man. I just was like, all right, I spent so much time driving around, looking at new areas, trying new things. Like, I went through the whole peacock bass phase, which was like the beginning of it, because that's like the easiest. And then I went on to the pacu and the clown knot. Everything, man. And just was really, I didn't know anyone. To be honest with you, I still, to this day, I only fish with like 2 people. It's not that I don't like people, and I don't keep a small circle because I'm like a tinfoil hat. I just don't know that many people. I'm an outgoing person, but I don't know, man. Like, I just have never really fished with a large group of people. So everything I've done outside of that, I've pretty much done myself. Until I started fishing heavily with Elliot for tarpon, and we realized that we both were like, we're doing it by paddlecraft, or it's not, there's no option. Like, we're not getting a boat, we're doing it from a canoe. And then that's when we really dove heavily into that. But all the snook, the big tarpon, all that stuff, it was me just literally driving around and finding a spot and being like, fishing every waking hour. I mean, there was times where I was getting up at 1:00 in the morning, fishing till 6 a.m., going home, showering, going to class, coming home, eating, going to work, and then sleeping a couple hours, and then maybe going. I mean, just I look back on it and I'm like, I mean, as much as I love fishing, if I would have had that kind of drive about anything else in my life, I probably wouldn't
Yeah, I
have to work
know.
anymore.
Oh
Like,
God, I know. I think about that sometimes too. I spent a good like 3 years plus of just like, I mean, every waking hour that I had, I was on Google Earth, like Google Maps, like Google mapping every like feature in every area of like Southwest, but really just the bottom, everything from like Lake Okeechobee down. And
yeah,
like, I would like, I'd make a pin. I'd send the pin to my like own email. And then like on the weekend, I'd go drive out there and check it out. But that's fun. And that's like
yeah,
relatable. And that's what I like about like your style is like, is, it's, you've done a lot with less. And I think I always like guys that do that with less gear. You mentioned the paddlecraft thing, and with less of a circle of friends, I'm the same way. The guys that
yeah.
I fish with the most don't even live in Florida. Like,
Right.
there's a total loner. Maybe I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's like you can benefit a lot off of what other people are doing, but you can also benefit a lot off of figuring things out on your own. I'm not getting.
I will say, I fish with, like I said, two other guys. One of them's Elliot, who I mean, it's just what we do. We fish together all the time.
Yeah,
He's my partner in the Python program, and we do everything. But the other one, his name's Anton. I maybe fish with Anton like 3 times, 4 times a tarpon season, right? But he's an invaluable friend because we're on that level where we'll share information with each other. Where it's like, hey man,
yeah,
like I was here last night and they were like eating heavy, and then that's been helpful. But I did not have that the first 2.5 years I lived down here, man. I
yeah,
mean, being a new guy, I didn't know anybody. Anybody I did meet, like I didn't really meet anybody organically outside of you and a couple people. Like it was like through Instagram, and you know how it is. If you catch a nice fish, people end up in your DMs
yeah.
asking about it. So that's kind of like, and I know how it came off, but I really just was trying to make friends. Like, hey, like I know that same spot. I've caught fish there. Like I'd love to go out. Like let's go fish. And then but no one's really interested in being that way. And I just kind of gave up on it. And I was like, all right, well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my own thing, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's hard to. It's harder and harder to me, especially fishermen, where everybody's by nature very secretive of what they know, what they have. It's like it almost has to be like transactional. I've probably
Yeah,
been more charitable than I should have been with certain fishing spots, but it's I think it's nice when it's also hard to approach somebody and ask for like and ask for guidance on things. It's like you better come equipped with something to like offer in return. I
yeah.
think.
And I
But
get a lot of questions still to this day. And like my Instagram's private. I don't have a big social media following. I mean, it's just really not my thing. But I
yeah,
still get lots of questions. And the first thing I always start with is like, well, what have you tried? And the amount of
mhm.
people who are like, well, nothing. I'm just trying to get a spot. I'm like, all right, well then we're done talking.
Yeah,
Because if you come to me and you're like, I've gone here, I've gone here, I've gone here, I've tried this and this, and this, I can tell you put effort in. Maybe I'm gonna throw you a little bone and be like, yeah, one of the spots you went to is actually pretty good, but you're doing it the wrong way. Try this way. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, I just wish more people we got away from this culture of like, I'll put you on if you put me on, or I just, hook me up, or more or less like I tried it myself. You know,
yeah. Yeah, you should
I
only
don't
be
know.
really ballparking things for folks anyway. It's like, I mean, there
Yeah.
needs to be a learning process, or it's a completely like fruitless fish if caught. It's like well
Yeah, but
again it
like
goes yeah,
I
it
wouldn't hold you.
almost goes back to the ownership thing. So if
Yeah,
somebody tells me exactly where to go and exactly what to use, exactly what time, that it's their catch.
that's what I'm saying. Like
Um
at some point, like I wouldn't know anything if people just put me on
yeah,
fish. I would know how to catch fish, the exact place and the exact way they taught me. And you know how it is down here. Tides are everything. So okay,
yeah,
yesterday we caught them just like this at 7 a.m. I come back tomorrow, it ain't that way. Like you need to be doing it yourself and learn. Like learning what doesn't work is just as valuable as learning. You know, like when I started really getting into the big tarpon, right? Like big tarpon. I went through a curve where we hooked probably 60 plus fish. And when I say hooked, like when I talk about tarpon, and I say, oh, we fought and lost this many fish. I don't count the first like 10 seconds. Like
yeah,
if that fish is on past 10 seconds and it comes off, that's a lost fish. Because like anything can happen in those first 10 seconds. It goes absolutely crazy. It is what it is. I don't even count it. But we pulled hooks, we bent hooks, we broke leader, we missed. There's so much stuff that like I would have never learned had I not learned it the hard way. I don't know. It's just,
Yeah. Well,
there's things I learned I could get away with
yeah.
sometimes, and it doesn't work.
On the topic of the tarpon and the bigger fish, what you do that I love, probably because I do like it's just what I enjoy. You keep mentioning like small paddle craft, and a lot of people are probably assuming, okay, well, you fancy, Hobie kayak that's rigged with all this stuff. Like what I like that you're doing, you and Elliot is catching these damn things out of canoes. Like,
yeah, dude.
Like that is 19... like to me, that's what I love. Like that is raw. That is like
we got two rides, and one of them is thanks to you. One of them is like a 1984 Grumman that's held together with duct tape. Doesn't have seats. We use like $5 Igloo coolers as seats.
Yeah,
we just paddle, and then I did that at the Sports Pal this year that I put together, and that is my favorite rig I've ever owned. That thing is the sweetest ride of all time. But yeah, man, like I always laugh. Like you see the big Hobie Pro anglers and all that stuff with enough electronics on it. You just buy a damn boat, bro. Just buy a boat.
Oh yeah, I know. Like especially the cost of them is like you could at least get like a micro skiff, or you could at least get like something that I don't know. But the canoe fishing, like for me, it's also like there's obviously some hazards involved, and it's not they don't there's a lot more work involved too, which I can appreciate. But I've had one experience hooking a big tarpon in my canoe, and it beat my ass like no other fish has ever done. I felt so helpless, and I felt like such a bitch. So I'm like, okay, I'd be like remiss if I didn't ask like for some tips and like how like the tactics behind it, because it's dangerous. Like when
it is.
Give me just
first of all, we'll fix that this year, because there's a spot about a very short drive from both our houses where we'll get you a big one from the canoe. That'll happen in a couple months, but it's dangerous. We've probably hooked 200 plus tarpon and fought them from the canoe at this point. We've had them land in the canoe. We've been knocked out of the canoe. We've flipped the canoe. We've had shark problems in the canoe, which if you think you're a man, you will shit your pants. Not fun. There's zero bit about that. That's fun.
Yeah.
And luckily that's only happened twice, and both times though was not fun. But it's a big learning curve. But for me, I like doing the paddlecraft stuff. There's just something about it. Makes me. We always laugh and we're like, we catch a big tarpon and we're like, the ancestors are smiling tonight. Like those Indians in the canoe, man. They're like, I always thought like someday I want to go to like Borneo or the Amazon and like get in the canoe with the guys and then be like impressed. Like, oh yeah, these guys like they're legit. Like that's the validation I want. I don't care about the dude who owns a TV show or something. Like I want the dude fishing out of a dugout canoe to be like, yeah, he's legit. I don't know. It's a challenge. Like anybody can go out with a guide and hook tarpon from a boat, but like let's see you do it 2:00 in the morning from a canoe in current. Like it's hard. It's hard. But the biggest thing with them is that I think in our area they get pressured a lot. So they know they have lines down their bodies and in every single scale that can sense the pressure in the water. Right? They're sensing that trolling motor. They're sensing you idle your motor. They're sensing that 22-foot boat coming over top of them. Like they know you're there. Granted, there's definitely times where they don't care and they're feeding. And if you got the right bait, they're going to eat. But another thing I'd be remiss if I don't talk about is of all the tarpon I have caught in my life, I have caught one on live bait. All artificial. Everything I do is artificial. And it's nothing special. It's just honestly the amount that Elliot and I both work. The thought of having to paddle around in a canoe and catch bait is just I'm not doing it. It's just miserable. Like I'm not doing it. So artificial it is.
It's harder to keep them alive too. Because I've done some of the live bait stuff out of canoes for other types of fish. It's just like it adds weight, which adds drag, and then it's just like you don't have a nice fancy. You might be able to put some kind of aeration system in there. It's like whatever you put in the canoe is not going to live for very long. It's not.
No.
Yeah, it's not what it's there for.
One thing I learned, because we did at one point we were trying. Like I don't know if you're familiar with the glass minnow run, but I've yet to figure out a good way to target tarpon during the glass minnow run, because they just kind of shut off everything with glass minnows. Unless you're a fly fisherman, that's probably your best bet. But someday I want to get good at it, but now we're talking a canoe in current with 2 guys in it fighting big fish from a fly rod. You're starting to really push what's
Yeah.
like fun. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't sound very fun to me. So,
Yeah.
but when we tried it with big baits, like I have an actual cooler in there with mullet, and in a canoe, when you start rocking, the water in that live well rocks, and then it starts rocking at a different like frequency than the boat, and
Oh yeah.
it really like can throw you off, especially if you're standing. It's not good. So just the whole thing about it, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
that's a
too
good
much
point.
work.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, 100%. I've only had one experience with the glass minnow run. Well, I've seen it once the first year I moved here in Naples, in this little bay area, and it was like blew my mind. And then I did seen it once. There was a big glass minnow run on the East Coast, and it was the same thing. There were tarpon that's when I had a boat before I sold it, and there were so many tarpon eating these minnows. I could at one point I got out of the boat and walked on the sand. These tarpon were like putting their face on the beach and eating them. I could have flipped the lure into their mouth, but they wouldn't eat anything I threw. I'm like, I don't know how you'd even mimic a fish like that.
You
Was it
can,
a spoon? Maybe a spoon.
Everything. Yeah, I've tried the spoons. I've tried the little DOAs. I've tried those hard baits that look like a school of bait fish put together.
Yeah.
They're just so keyed in on the glass. I'm sure someone's listening to this laughing right now because
Yeah,
they found
I
some
have
way
no
to just
shame. I'm not a
smoke
tarpon
them.
fisherman. I'm trying to learn here, people.
Yeah. Somebody's listening to this who just probably crushes them during the glass. It's probably their favorite time of the year to catch them. They're just laughing.
Right.
Yeah, but I haven't. Again, that's the thing. Like, I like figuring stuff out myself the hard way, and I'm not anti-boat, so I don't ever think I'm anti-boat. I'm actually in the market for a boat. But I do really enjoy just the challenge of it. But yeah, so from the canoe, at least, like I was saying, they sense that boat, the trolling motor and stuff. I can sneak up on fish in that canoe, and they don't know I'm there. And a lot of times, those big fish, you're gonna get, I'd say, 2 shots. If you know they're there, a specific fish, you're gonna get 2 shots on it. After that, if it didn't eat, it's not gonna eat. It's gonna know you're there. But a lot of times, it's just a matter of just trying to time that current right and be there when the fish want to be there feeding. Fighting them from the canoe is horrible. It's fun. It's a blast, but it's like, you become a giant bobber, which is a problem because you're not wearing the fish out. So a lot of times what I'm doing is we're hooking them, fighting them. They're going to jump like crazy. And then they kind of just get into that mode where they're pulling you around. And I'm trying to get somewhere shallow enough that I can get out. And that's where things get kind of sketchy, especially, in shark infested waters where they're feeding on tarpon.
Yeah.
And now you're splashing around trying to land them. But I don't see too many people doing it, man. I really don't. I mean, you see the guys on the East Coast catching them during the mullet run from the kayaks and stuff, but I don't know too many people who are catching them from canoes, at least in the numbers that we are. I don't know, but I've been out there, man, in the tarpon armada of all the boats in the canoe, and they're just looking at me like I'm crazy, They're like, dude,
the photos are gnarly because that's what, and you've already actually, you pretty much naturally answered a lot because I'm like, I think the advantages that the canoe has is sort of anybody could have guessed that it offers better stealth, and better opportunity to sneak up on the fish. But then the hazards are also pretty self-explanatory with the fighting. But I see the photos of y'all gripping their jaw at the side of the canoe. I'm gonna say, man, that is so intimidating. Like the idea of tipping and falling, and then every bit of water they throw on you is gonna stay in the canoe.
Yep.
So
when we go out, it's super minimalist. One rod.
Yeah.
That's it. We take one rod. I have a dry bag of tackle that we roll tight so it floats. Headlamps and life jackets, man. And that's what we're rolling with because anything, like, we've done enough to know that anything can happen. I don't like bringing extra rods and stuff because if they flip, then they're gone.
Yeah.
And I don't
Are you paddling?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're paddling. So
that's the part that's tough because the canoes get pushed. If there's any little bit of wind, any little bit of current, they get pushed. So as I was curious, I guess if it's the two of you, if you're out there with a partner, at least one person can kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, and I do it. I do it alone still. I just do it from my Hobie Outback, which in my opinion, the 2017 to 2019 Hobie Outback is the greatest kayak ever made. It's But the thing is, people buy them and then they get too much on. I have nothing on mine. It's literally just the kayak. I have the little dry hole where I put my phone and some storage and the pedals. And it's nice enough that like it's light, it's movable, it's stable enough I can stand out of. And I've caught plenty of really big tarpon alone from my kayak. It's just, when you're alone, it's very difficult to wear them out. It's a long process, and they're very green. And when you try to grab them, then you got to have. I see people, if you're catching big tarpon, it's not no thumbs in the mouth, man. It's all fingers, thumbs on the outside, because they're. And I always talk about like landing and taking photos. Everybody's always concerned about the health of the fish, and they're definitely one that you don't want to take out of the water. But if you look at my tarpon photos, they're all crap. I'm actually really jealous of the photos you get of your fish because they look so much better than mine. But I could show you the videos, man, where like I'm getting the shit beat out of me grabbing those fish. Like because from a boat you can whoop them. From the canoe, you're more or less tricking them. You're tricking them into coming into shallower water and then grabbing them when they're not expecting it. And it's a full-on wrestling match. Like I've watched Elliot get drugged completely underwater with and then me having to like reel him and the fish back in. Like it's not. I'm not even kidding. They are very green, and we don't get very good pictures because you maybe get like 2 or 3 seconds of it not moving, and then
quality pictures are nice, and it's a luxury, but it's not like you can't make that, especially a fish like that. I mean, if some of my best photos are of something like an alligator gar, that's different. Like they are it's a fish that can stay out of water for like 30 minutes if it stays wet, and they're just not that they're not. It's not even on the same. But I've never caught a big tarpon, so I wouldn't even know how to handle that. But
I noticed too the different times of the year. It really makes a difference. Like we went out actually last night and got a decent one. But the water right now, dude's like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Not good for reviving fish. And that's the canoe that I built this year, the Sports Pal. I've got a 3-horse on the back of it, which I absolutely love because I don't use it while fishing. So the way we fish hasn't changed, but it's allowed me to like if I go to a spot I want to fish and it's not that great, I can go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I would buy an outboard for a canoe 100% of the time simply for reviving fish. It has made my life so much easier because instead of having to
pulling
walk
them through the water,
yep, literally, like instead of having to walk them around and stuff, I get on the engine and Elliot lays in the bottom of the canoe with his just literally like on his belly with just his arm and the fish over the side. We just drag it till it kicks hard enough that he can't hold on, and then it swims away. Like it revives them so much better in this hot water. It's in the wintertime I've noticed they don't have that many problems. They're pretty green and ready to go. But in the summer, you got to really revive them.
Well, Elliot, we keep mentioning him, so shout out to that guy. It seems like the ideal partner for a wild man because he's got the dude looks like Tarzan. He's like a little power lifter, wild man.
He looks like he's a homeless guy who like showers once a month. But I promise you, he's a functioning. He's a substitute teacher and all kinds of stuff. He's a functioning adult. He just doesn't look like it.
He's another one whose social media I love to look at. The dude's an animal. He's like squatting like 500 pounds and then wrestling a giant pythons and stuff. But that's a good partner.
He had never done any reptile stuff till we started really hanging out.
Okay.
So we started doing like the chameleons, and I started really getting heavily into the pythons, especially when I like got into the program doing that, which we can talk about later. But we really dove into tarpon together because he's from here, and I think it was one of those things where like you don't talk about the tarpon run unless it's with someone else who knows about the tarpon.
Yeah.
And I found it on my own and did all my own, like I just from simply just like not sleeping and grinding. So we kind of met through that, and then we're like, all right, well, like we fished a couple times together, and we were talking about how like we can find them. And I'm hooking them, but I can't land them. And he's having similar problems. So we started just fishing a lot together, trying new things. And we really we got a system down. We're like, we don't even have to talk, man. It's like, it's just a robot. It's at this point, we both know who's on the rod, what the other one's got to do, the whole 9 yards. And it really made it to like a well-oiled machine. It took a long time to get there though. So we lost a lot of fish. There was a lot of times where like we just went, I just was like, I'm done trying this because it's heartbreaking. If I had to fish for 45 minutes to an hour, and then it just
gets
pops
off
for some reason you don't even understand. And that's part of tarpon fishing. But we've got to the point now where this year was a bad run for us. I don't know. Some of the people seem to have a lot of success, but I kind of took it for granted. They were here really, really thick at first, and I was like, we caught a lot of fish right up front, and I was like, all right, we got months of this, and they just disappeared.
Yeah.
And then it was like, trickles of fish, which meant you had to really make your shots count. Like you had to be smart, and you weren't going to get second chances. And I think that this year we're up to we landed I don't know, right on 20, 21. I bet we only hooked 60 fish. So tarpon wise, I feel like that's a good landing ratio. I don't know what other people do, but my first year we went 30 or 40 fish before we landed one. So
yeah,
I don't know.
That's wild. It probably doesn't help too much being in a canoe, and you just sort of you're at the mercy of the initial burst of power they have. But the other one that you do though that is even almost seems crazier is and maybe easier. I don't know. Is the Goliath grouper out of a canoe?
No, it's not. No. I'm gonna be honest with you. Unless you are someone, you could do it. Someone who's really experienced in a canoe or a kayak. Yeah, that's not one to try. That's
right, because if they want to pull you into something, I don't know how you can fight that in a canoe.
That's the difference, because with the tarpon, they're dangerous in the aspect that they're 150 to 200 pound fish that's going to jump, and if you're in the way of where it's jumping, you're going to get hit and you're going to get flipped. And landing them's hard. The Goliath grouper, on the other hand, are going for the heaviest structure they can find, and you're going with them.
Right.
And it is dangerous. It's dangerous, especially if you're fishing a dock or structure or something in a heavy current. They're going in, and if you're not prepared for that, you're going with them. And that's I don't target them so much anymore. I still catch them because they're greedy little bastards. But we got one last year, man, that was almost 300 pounds from the canoe, and it was it was an all night ordeal. It took us hours to wear this thing down. And I think it's pretty cool. I don't know how many people can say they've caught a 250 plus pound Goliath from a canoe, but it's dangerous. It's real dangerous. You're no stranger to that. You've caught plenty of them, but
never from a canoe. But I can't imagine, because at least the tarpon's pulling you. I'm assuming here across the water. Yeah, the Goliath is pulling your ass down and against things up against something.
So imagine this: you got a 150 pound fish that you fought them has their 0 to their torque is insane. They might not have the most insane top speed, but that torque, there's nothing stopping them. You hook one in a canoe, it wants to go somewhere. You're going with it. You have to simultaneously put enough drag on it to stop it, because it's going to break you off. But also you have to keep that rod in line with the canoe, because if that rod is off to the side, it's going to flip you. You know what I'm saying? You have to, and then you have to still try to navigate the canoe and pull them. It's just, there's all the stars have to align to make it work. Yeah. But the difference with Goliath grouper are, if you get them out the structure and you get them to open water, as long as your hook's good and your leader's good, you can it's a caught fish. You're going to get, if you're smart, you're going to get that fish. Because then they just do the thing where they open their mouth when you try to reel them up to just make themselves like a
umbrella coming through the water, like a wind sail.
You just got to be patient with it. You'll be all right. But yeah, that initial, I have a saying: if you make it past 60 seconds with a Goliath, your odds of landing it are pretty good. But that first 60 seconds, you could end up losing everything you own and having to swim to shore. So
yeah. Oh, that stuff's awesome. I love the canoe fishing. I'm I gotta ask him about some of the canoe adventures. It's that's so awesome. But we
were always so jealous of yours, man, because we had that beat up thing held together with duct tape and JB Well, and we were I kept seeing your canoe, and I'm man, we just step our game up. That thing's a freaking Cadillac.
Just get a good bilge sponge, and the day will never end. And one good bilge sponge, and you're good.
I love, what do they call are they called sponsons?
Yeah,
on the outside, man, those have been a game changer. It's been way safer for me, that's for sure. We've actually been talking about just ordering another set and just kind of retrofitting them to the old.
And they look nice. They kind of look cool. Not that matters, but it's cool. They make the canoe look sharp. But yeah, it's just a no-brainer thing to have on there, just to say.
I didn't think they'd make that much of a difference, but immediately I noticed. I was like, oh wow, this thing is it when those foam pads hit the water, there's a clear resistance to flipping. So
yeah, you could just about sit on the side of them, hang your feet over the edge at times, but that's cool. But I'm trying to find the best way to get into this. Like the elephant in the room for me is this reptile stuff that you're involved in. I'm looking at the aquariums, and I'm just like, we're just cannonballing into it. We're just diving into it out of the. We could talk for another hour about all the other fishing. I'm just gonna gloss even. I'm just gonna skip some of the exotics. Just for personal interest. I hate to be so selfish, but like the canoe fishing for tarpon and goliath and other stuff. I was like, damn, that is so badass. Like, it's just unique. But the other thing you're doing is you mentioned that, you kind of got into the reptile. Was that like a recent thing, or was that like a lifelong interest of yours?
No, so reptile. So it's kind of funny. I've had a full-time job since I was 13. But when I was in middle school, one of my biology teachers was like one of those like weird Bill Nye types. It's like one of those teachers you remember for your whole life, and he had a whole room full of reptiles, man. And so I ended up like talking to my mom to let me have a boa constrictor, and I guess like got so fascinated with it, and there's this reptile shop near my house. I was just in there so much. I think the owner was just like, you're annoying me. It's like, why don't you start cleaning? Why don't you just get on the payroll? You're here so much. Like, go clean some cages.
Yeah.
So my first real job was working for a guy who bred and imported like all kinds of exotic reptiles. And I just done it ever since. I had a full-time reptile breeding business when I was 17 years old. Like that's where I made my money. I was breeding snakes out of my basement and selling them all over the world. So I don't really do it to that level anymore. I think the most I ever had was like 400.
Jeez.
Yeah, I cut way back. At one point, I had like 15. I've got about 100 now, just because I have babies I need to sell. But like my normal snakes, like my collection's only like 40 animals. I've just done it forever. And when I moved to Florida, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm a huge reptile guy. I'm actually like, Ellie and I are leaving for Indonesia in like a couple days to go catch king cobras.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about that.
We should have done the podcast after that.
Yeah, we can do a follow up.
Yeah, we can do another one.
I really didn't have any intent. Like, I never came down here with reptiles in my mind. It was fish, man. And I have a fish brain. I'll always have a fish brain. I can't help it. Like, anywhere I go, the first thing I'm looking for is like, you see a stream and you're like, ooh, like what's in there? But at one point, I'd caught all these exotic fish. Like, I used to like checking the bucket list off. Like, I did the pacu, I did the clown knives, I did the arapaima.
Yeah.
I did all that stuff, and I was like, all right, man, like I want to see what this python thing's about. And if you thought getting info from people on fish was hard, getting info from people on pythons is almost impossible.
That's weird to me. Yeah.
People are really, really tight-lipped about it. And I want to say it's because like people are doing illegal stuff, probably like not me, obviously, but like I think people are collecting so whatever. Like, they're looking at it from a monetary standpoint. I've never looked at anything fishing or outdoors related as monetary. Like, I go to work, I make my money to pay my bills. The last thing I want to do is turn the things I love into my reptile collection is what it is because it's what I want to do. If at any point in time this starts feeling like a job, I'll sell everything until it doesn't feel like a job anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to catch snakes. I was like, dude, I don't care. Like, you can keep everything we find. I don't even care. I just want to find one. And nobody would help me. So one night I just said, fuck it. And I bought a flashlight and I just started driving around the Everglades.
Yeah.
And I like to take credit for it, but I think it's just dumb luck. I came across like a 9-foot python my very first night.
Yeah.
Was like freaking out, caught it, brought it home, skinned it, posted a bunch of stuff. And in the process of me like trying to find out about the python program or like just catching them, there's people who are pretty high in the media presence.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was Donna Khalil. She's like the python lady. She's like the one woman who does this, and she's an older woman and she catches tons of pythons and whatnot. So I had like befriended her on Facebook, and she gave me a little bit of info. And when I caught it, she's like, "Hey, I'm so proud of you. That's awesome. Like, you can come be my volunteer, because she was one of the contractors.
That's cool.
So I did, and what I expected to just be like me going out with her a couple times, blossomed into this friendship that, I mean, like, she's like, I consider her like a mother to me. I mean, she's just such a phenomenal person. I went out with her all the time until I was lucky enough to be offered a position as one of the contractors myself. So now that is like a second job for me that I do. I work for the state removing. So I'm one of the people who go out, and I mean, this year alone we're at like 130 for the year. So we take it really seriously. And luckily for me, about the time tarpon starts slowing down, that starts picking up. So
Yeah.
it works out pretty well for me to just roll right into it. But um, yeah, man, I mean, it's just such a weird taboo thing. Like, it's just crazy to think about, because they're not even this common in Burma where they're from. I mean,
Yeah.
you're in the Everglades, and I mean, you've seen the videos. People catch giants. We've caught giants. We This year alone, we dug them out of the ground on nets. Like, we dug a 15-footer out of the ground on a bunch of eggs. I mean, just crazy stuff.
Yeah,
That's
it's a weird thing because, like, when you think about Florida, people outside of Florida, people associate this state with staple characters of the swamp, like alligators. It's like, this is the alligator state, and now, like, there's this like new powerhouse reptile on the scene that's kind of big, almost reaching the same, it's like when you think Florida, you think crazy reptiles, and it's like now when you think Florida, you think, oh, that's the state where those giant pythons live.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess this is like, where did it start? Was it an accident, or do you think this
was? So from what I've understood, and the cool thing about my position now, that I actually work for the state, it's everything we do is science based, and they're, as much as they're interested in removing the animals, they're interested in understanding what's going on with the population. There's so much more science behind it than people think. It's not just rednecks running around the swamp shooting pythons. Like, there's tons of science that goes into what I do. But from my understanding, it was back in like Hurricane Andrew. There was a large reptile facility, I guess somewhere in Homestead, and it got wiped out by the hurricane, and just snakes got loose, and that's how it started. Because they're really a super predator, man. They get big quick. I mean, they start out at 22 to 26 inches out of the egg, and within a year they can be 8 foot easy. They can be sexually mature and breed within like 3.
Yeah.
And they can lay anywhere between 30 and 100 eggs. And so it exponentially multiplies very quickly. So over the course of like 30 years, it's become a real problem. And now I don't personally believe, and this doesn't reflect, and my opinions obviously don't reflect like the agency I work for or anything, but I don't think we'll ever get rid of it. I think what we're doing now is the best possible way to help manage the problem. I've seen they've tried everything. They've done like the thermal cameras and training the dogs and all this stuff, and it does work to a certain extent. But realistically, we're only catching the animals that are moving in the spot we're at when we're there. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that really drew me to it was like, you're a big fish guy. We don't go fishing, we're hunting, like you're hunting for a big fish. I'm not, if you're going bass, I mean, guys, bass guys the same way, but if you go to pond fishing, right, you're just there to catch a fish.
Yeah.
But if you go to a pond and you're like, I know somewhere down there is a 30-pound red-tailed catfish, like I'm going to catch that fish, like that's hunting. And that's how I view tarpon. That's how I view all big snook. I'm hunting that big fish. Pythons are no different. Rolls right back into the same, you use the same techniques and everything. The only difference is you can't really pattern pythons like you would a fish. You can obviously look at the weather conditions. If it's a cold night, clearly a reptile is not going to move as much as if it's 85 degrees.
Yeah.
But outside of weather patterns and where there's water and where there isn't, that's about it. I think a lot of people have the misconception that's very easy to come down here and do. And I would beg to differ. It's actually extremely difficult. And I invest a lot of time and a lot of money into doing it. And there are plenty of nights that I come home empty handed. Like they are very smart. They hide well. They can go weeks without moving. It's interesting. It's really interesting. It's from a reptile perspective. It's very cool. Not so cool to our ecosystem here, though. Like,
Yeah,
it's I don't know.
It's funny you mentioned that. Like, there's definitely been some late nights where I was coming across the state, down in the Everglades, and I'm like, oh, I want to pull off on some of these dirt roads and drive around and see if I can find one. I've never found anything. It's
Yeah,
like, but I know damn well I'm probably near them, and I don't have the vision for it.
it happens though, man. Like we go out there, and I mean, the more training you have, and like obviously, I have a lot more training than a lot of people, so I know what to look for. I can look and see things in grass stuff, but the state record was caught crossing the road. I mean, anyone's gonna see a telephone pole laying across the road. Like it's it can happen to anyone at any time. It's a huge adrenaline rush grabbing one of those things because they're not friendly and they're very strong, and I mean they don't want to be messed with, which they've never seen humans before.
Yeah.
It's but I haven't lived in Florida long enough to be like to really understand the impact from a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get when I go through the Everglades and I don't see any raccoons. Like I understand, but like when I go with Elliot and he's like, man, like I remember being a kid out here and like there was stuff everywhere. And now there just isn't. Like I don't relate to that as much because I wasn't here when I didn't see it before these things were a real problem. But
yeah, that's a crazy thing. And what's bizarre, and you sort of alluded to this, was like how big they are, and like the state records. I followed it a little bit. Again, it's one of those things that's fun to look at. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
And it makes big news every time somebody gets one. But it's like, it seems like that state record is like rapidly being beaten. Like, I'm wondering, like, are they getting bigger? Like, this, I might be wrong here, but like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I wonder if we're going to see a day, if we're not already there, where the pythons in Florida are even bigger than where they're native to.
Already passed.
Insane.
Yep. They're bigger here than they are and I have like a different side of it too, because it's one of those things that's I'm really involved in, and I try to learn as much as I can because I understand it from all aspects. Because when I lived in Ohio, when I was a full-time snake breeder, Burmese pythons were my main animal I bred. So I understand them from like the captive owning them as a pet side of things. And I understand how big they can get if you give them everything they need to get big. They can get like a 19-foot Burmese python, which is the state record now. Yeah. That's nothing in captivity. They get much bigger than that if you feed them, and it's not necessarily healthy for the animal to be fed the way they feed them in captivity to get that big, but they can get bigger. And I do think that it'll get beat again. I don't know when or why, but I don't think there'll ever be a day where we see like a 23-foot. I think we'll see a 20-foot snake in the Everglades. I think it'll happen. But it's kind of like alligators, right? Where like they grow, I don't know what the rule is, but like, an 8-foot alligator might be like 10 years old, but a 10-foot alligator is like 40 years old. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's got to be a smart animal. And I'll tell you, I don't know how any of that stuff survives down there with the traffic. I mean, it's horrific. There's the amount of, I'm down there every night driving, and just the roadkill is crazy.
Yeah.
It's bad. So, I mean, they learn to stay away from the roads, because they're dangerous. Well, guess where you python hunt from? The roads. So you got a big animal that's learned the roads are dangerous. It doesn't come near them. It's going to go years and years and years and years without being bothered. And then maybe one day it slips up because it's mating season. Just like deer, they're looking for a mate, and it comes out on a road, and it's a bunch of college kids jump out and grab it. And then, now we got a new state record. So that's, I think realistically, that's how it is.
I think about too, like a 15-footer, or the dang things are big as round as your leg. I can't imagine, like, if you're not paying attention driving at night, going 70 miles an hour down the highway, and you don't see it in time. Like, that's like hitting a speed bump.
Yeah,
it kills somebody.
Yeah, for sure. I see the big dead alligators. So I'm like, first of all, how did you miss that? Second of all, like, where's the car?
Because somebody's dead. Yeah, I've seen that too. The big alligators, like the 9-footers with a crushed skull. I'm like, what happened to that car? They went airborne.
There's no way you just kept driving because
there's no way. Yeah, you don't just mush over them. Like, that's like hitting a boulder. But it's crazy. And now, are they like bound by environmental factors? Like, is there like a temperature threshold where they're sort of like captive by our, it's, if you go above such and such level, it's going to be too cold and they won't make it? Or I'm wondering how far they can really expand.
I think they'll expand further north. I don't know how far though. I don't think they're going to be able to make it into Georgia and stuff like that because they can survive a very brief cold spell, like down to the 50s. Okay. But they're cold blooded. And if they're exposed to that for an extended period of time, the cold won't kill them unless it's really cold. Okay. Mm-hmm. But they're going to get a respiratory infection and that is going to kill them.
Okay.
Slowly. It will, it won't kill them immediately, but it will kill them slowly. And so I think eventually there's gonna be some line somewhere where past XYZ point is too cold for them and they can't do it. They're not. People talk about them evolving to handle the cold better and stuff like that. I mean that stuff that takes place over hundreds of years. Like maybe is it possible? Yeah, sure, but not in our lifetime. Because like that's not going to be a thing. But they're found pretty far north. I don't know, man. I've been seeing pictures. I can't validate any of this information. It's all on Facebook, but. I belong to a snake identification group where people who just regular people, they see a snake in there, they can post a picture and say, "Hey, what is this?" And I'm simply part of it because I'm a big proponent for like we don't need to kill things, right? Like there's no the amount of poor water snakes that have died because people told them they were cottonmouths and they shot them. Like I would rather people get educated, and if I can help educate you, great. But every now and then, man, I see stuff on there that I see through the lines. And one of those is that I've been seeing on a couple occasions, completely unrelated, people posting pictures of hatchling Burmese pythons up past Inglewood, which is pretty far north. Yeah, it's up near the Tampa area. And I can't substantiate, they could be troll accounts or anything like that, but I'm looking at that snake and I can tell that it's not a captive born snake and that it hatched recently. It's not something that someone kept in their garage feeding in and let it go. Like that's a snake that's, he's a fresh one. He's new to the world. And I've seen a couple of them where I'm like, there could be a population up there. I don't know.
That kind of goes back to, I said that it was interesting when you mentioned how like tight-lipped people get about it because it's like, and even talking about the bow fishing thing, this is sort of some parallels there. It's weird when the intent should be total elimination of the animal.
Right.
And I've seen similar with like bow fishing guys who are shooting carp, but I could go to the same group of people like, yeah, that's right, we need to get rid of these terrible invasive carp. So what's your hot spot? Oh, I ain't gonna tell you that. So you don't actually want them gone. Yeah, that's your own personal like thing. So it's like, okay, well, the same, I don't know, the same frame of mind that you would protect your quarry may also spawn off creating new quarries. And that's what makes me wonder is like, how did they spread that rapidly? Unless maybe like, I don't know, my mind's wondering, but you got to think like if it's something you can make money off of, it just behooves you in an expansion so open where it's easy to hide to farm things.
Well, that's what happened with the chameleons. Like I know you and I've been chameleon hunting and stuff like that. They people set up these like breeding populations of the chameleons, right? And their intent was to come back a year or two later, collect all the babies and sell them.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happened. But what they weren't counting on was the fact that chameleons just lay eggs until they die and they just explode. And they essentially oversaturated the market where there's so many chameleons available that it isn't monetarily makes sense to go out and collect them anymore. So then they just don't. And then you and I can come out on a Saturday night and walk down some canals on the back of my neighborhood and catch chameleons. Like why would I even bother trying to sell something like that? I'm gonna be able to sell for maybe $3 a lizard if I wanted to go through all the steps and processes to get the license. You know what I'm saying? It's just so much work that no one wants to bother with it. So now we have the problem. The difference is that chameleons aren't causing any issues. They're just coexisting, right? And like I don't know if do you remember that whole scenario with those bow fishing guys that came down to Ida and slaughtered all those clown knives?
Yeah, I saw some posts on that. Yeah,
right. And like that's one of those things where if you don't live here, it's hard to understand the scenario with the pythons, the exotic fish and stuff. Because they come down here and I don't know what their intent was. I mean, clearly their intent was to make a clickbait video. they come down to, oh, these are invasive fish. We got to get them out, blah, 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 blah. And then they bow fish, an entire boatload of clown knife fish. And it wasn't, the locals didn't take kindly to it.
Right.
They did not get the overwhelming, you know, I guess audience they expect they're going to. People were threatening to shoot them and, cut their tires and steal their boat and all that stuff, because that's, as you know, that's one of those fish where it's not supposed to be here, but it's coexisting, and it's a very unique thing to here. And there are people who make a living guiding for them. And, it's like, is that something we should really be focused on eliminating? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't know these things, but I can tell you from my experience as an angler that, from what I can tell, they're just coexisting, right? Like, I mean, if there's no lack of bait, my God, you go out there and fish for them for shiners. The biggest bass I've caught in Florida, I caught fishing for clown knives. It looked like a football. Like, clearly that fish is not struggling to eat alongside those clown knives. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a weird.
Pythons are not that way though. Like, pythons are a clear problem. They're causing real. And I've said this. Once it's a big problem now. I wonder what will happen when it starts becoming a thing where they're eating burrowing owls, or if someone finds a cougar cub in the belly of a python, you know what I'm saying? Like, then what happens? Because I don't know.
I think you're right. It's one of those things where it's like, man, they're never going to go anywhere. The best you can bet and best you can hope for is control measures, like just control what's already there, minimize or slow down the damage. But you see these videos too, or I don't remember how I stumbled across this one. I guarantee you've seen this. You're in this world, so I know you see everything that probably. But I remember I saw a video a while back. It was somebody has like exposing these influencer types with catching pythons.
Videos.
Yeah, catching these pythons, and they got crazy patterns and colors, but they're it's like fingerprints. They all have very identifiable patterns. And I watched this video where it was the same snake, the same python, in like 5 different videos, just being hoed around between these influencers. Oh, found a snake in the toilet. Oh, found a snake under my bed. Oh, found a snake in the storm drain. Same damn snake every time.
Yep. And
so we're definitely moving things around.
And that's why, that exact reason is why, I always get asked questions from the public of like, I want to go python hunting. Like, how do I do this? And I always explain to them, like, there are certain areas of the state where anyone can go catch a python if you see one. The rule is, though, you can't transport them alive. And that's the exact reason, right? Because, like, number one, that's just animal abuse. Like, that animal, although they're not supposed to be here, they're still living creatures. You should not be treating them wrong. Like, that animal's just getting abused. It's not getting fed, watered, or anything. They're just pissing it off for videos and passing it around. Like, that's animal. But also, that's why the state, doesn't let just anyone go catch pythons and do what they want with them, because that's how new populations arise and stuff. So, we're all, there's a lot of scrutiny under what I do, and it's very specific how I have to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. And I agree with it. And I understand it. But it's also hard for me to give other people advice on python hunting, because I have I hunt places where the public can't go. So I can't, what works for me isn't going to work for you, because, you can't go there.
Yeah.
So,
well, I get it. I kind of understand that, like, you think like, oh, well, why don't they just open the floodgates and have open season and just let everybody go down there? While that initially that sounds like, oh, it'd be great if there's just more people out there to take them out. Well, then you got to wonder how many doofuses are going to be out there killing native snakes, because they don't know.
Yeah. That's a huge problem. And, I will say that they do the Python tournament every year for everyone to come down in like the 1 week. Pretty cool. You get a lot of people from a lot of different places coming down here to hunt pythons. And they go through this like very specific orientation of like what you can and can't do. Like, you're not to touch native stuff. There's a number for you to call if you have questions, whether what you have is a python. I'm saying? Like, they're very well put together, but they make you go to that orientation before you can go do it. Right. Like, you have to, so there's like some structure to it. It would be very different if it was like, open season. And then, you run the risk of, people just doing a lot, anytime there's a chance to make money, I'm convinced someone will find a way to illegally do it. So,
Yeah.
it's just you gotta be very careful of those kind of situations. That's another reason I don't really associate with too many people, because I do my best to not get involved in any of that. I'm fishing wise or otherwise.
Yeah.
I think we live in a weird state where, you know how much trespassing fishing did you do in Oklahoma?
Oh gosh, it's actually if you see a no trespassing sign in Oklahoma, you actually have to like abide by it because the people out there, I don't know, it's scary. I didn't do a lot of it there.
Exactly. How much could you do
Here,
down here?
honestly, I came here with the same mindset because of where I came from, so I didn't do a lot, and then I kind of realized that they're just, I don't know. I don't want to
Yeah.
I don't want to incriminate myself, but it
Right.
seems like those signs just are very devalued
It's
around here.
totally different. Yeah,
They
it's just
are.
it's totally different down here.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain or understand that if you're not in this world, that like some things are okay even though they don't seem like they're not okay. However, that
Yeah.
doesn't always relate to everything.
Yeah.
Like no trespassing a neighborhood pond to catch a fish is one thing. No trespassing government land to look for snakes, totally different. Like
Yeah.
one's gonna get you, you need to go home. The other one, you're gonna go to jail. So
Yeah. I
it's,
get that. I don't know, man. People around here trounce around, do whatever they can to be a viral sensation, and the same guys that I saw in the videos with the snakes are the same ones that own like the little koi pond pools in the backyard full of crazy exotic fish. And then you scroll a couple of thumbnails down, and there they are catching that same kind of fish at the nearby
oh
pond.
yeah, yeah.
I'm like, hell, you're moving these fish are just your Instagram models. They're just your
It's
they're just your YouTube models. What is this?
I learned that lesson when I
It
moved
is a
down here.
mental illness, I think. It's literally a
I agree.
sickness.
I agree, because like when I first moved down here, no one I didn't do it in Ohio. I didn't really, I don't think there's enough things in Ohio that you could possibly do that with outside of like lying about where you catch fish, which everyone's going to do anyway. So that is what it
Yeah.
is. But I moved down here and I see these influencers catching all this crazy stuff, and I started like comparing myself to them, right? Like
Yeah.
measuring what I do up to them, and like I would be like, okay, I'm definitely smarter. I'm as good of an angler. Why am I not able to do these things? I don't understand. And then I started slowly realizing that like it's not all as it seems.
Hmm.
Like there's a lot of stuff that is fabricated for social media. You know, I don't know. I've seen it on all fronts, but like for me, the big one was like the red tail catfish. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't understand why I can't find a red tail catfish, and like how hard I've tried. There's definitely places you can go to catch them. I just haven't been lucky enough. But there are definitely people who just have a pond that they're catching their own pets from. You know, so
Bizarre. I don't know, man. To each their own. I guess there's no real harm done other than being annoying. And hell,
yeah,
if that's all you're really doing, no big deal. So, but anyway, dude. So like as we're kind of winding down a little bit on time, we've sort of talked about where you came from, where you're at now, and then like I'm always love to know like what people have got going on next. I had seen one of your posts. Again, I get to see it. Other people don't if your stuff's private. But I saw where you'd been in Costa Rica or somewhere. Photos
yeah,
of tapir, different types of snakes. It's like I know you're making these like you're starting to launch these campaigns now. When like guys of our age bracket start just being bold and being spontaneous, I love that stuff. It's like why are
yeah,
more people need to be out going and getting uncomfortable and going and having a level of uncertainty in their life and going and doing something unique, not watching it on a video. But just tell me a little bit real quick. Because I'm interested. Had no idea you're going to chase freaking king cobras next.
yeah, man.
Give me the rundown on the trip before, because you got to be excited
Yeah.
about that.
I'm a big proponent of what I call type B fun. Like in the moment, it might suck a little bit, but
Yeah.
when you look back on it, you're gonna be like, man, that's one hell of a trip. So we're going to Indonesia essentially I'm going for 2 weeks. Elliot's staying for a week longer to do some diving. I'm actually not dive certified, so there's just no point in me hanging around. Indonesia is really weird on fishing. Like you can fish Indonesia, but there's a lot of rules and regulations to it. And I'm not sure how that works yet. I would like to fish when I'm there, but I need to get there before I can figure out. But we're essentially going to Bali, starting off to look for king cobras. It's king cobra nesting season. Just like anywhere else in the world, habitat destruction is happening over there too, and it's something I really want to see in the wild before it's not a thing anymore. And then we're going to be leaving from there to go to Sumatra to still live in the jungle for about a week. I'm a little nervous about that one because that's about as, Bali's still a civilization and has infrastructure. Sumatra does not. That is as wild as it gets. We're going to go look for orangutans and see what other kind of trouble we get into. But when I first moved down here, everything was brand new to me. So I really didn't have a whole lot of, aspiration to go anywhere else because everything was still like, I had it right here. Why would I?
Yeah.
Now I've been here, and not that I don't love it, and not that I'm not going to change what I'm doing, but now I'm starting to get that bug where it's like, the next adventure. I want to go. I'm going back to Thailand in December with my wife. Where it's actually going to be our honeymoon.
Oh, cool.
But we're going to do a bunch of diving and stuff, and then I want to go back to the Amazon. That's the next one. I think you might beat me there though. You get this feeling when you go places like that you're just everything's different. It's like you're on a different planet. The people are different. The smells are different. Even the heat, everything is so different. You really feel like completely on another planet. It's incredible. Like the sounds you're going to hear, the things you're going to see, not to mention the fish you're going to catch, just going to be out of this world.
Yeah. I'm definitely at that point now where I'm like, I need to start doing things now and just not like worried about, oh, one day I'll do this. And it's like, no, it has to happen now.
I leave on the 9th, man. We're going to be gone.
Nice.
We're going to both come back. We're going to have some wild stories to tell each other.
Yeah.
So we have to freaking get together and plan a trip soon. It can be a foreign country, or just alligator gar. Cause I still got knocked that one off my list, man.
Well, anyway, I guess we'll start wrapping things up. I'm excited to see what happens in Borneo. And just where you're going, like King Cobra. Like when you were saying that, I was just like laughing because I think, I hear a lot about people going to Bali. People go to Bali all the time, like to sip tea and look out over the canopy. You're going there to look for king cobras. I'm like, Jesus. Like, you don't hear that often. I mean, people plan vacations to travel. It ain't to go look for a monkey in the forest or orangutans, but it's so admirable. And it's like, it's so rare, especially guys like us. I don't know, man. Like I still consider us young, but people just aren't.
For sure. I feel young.
Aren't doing this stuff. People are not doing these things, and it blows my mind because it's like,
and you should be, because I'm in that weird spot, and I talk about this a lot. Where like I'm a nurse, I work in a hospital. Like you don't come to see me on your best day.
Mm-hmm.
Like the people I'm seeing are not like that. It's not a good time for them.
Yeah,
and I talk to these people. They're my patients, man. And nobody talks about the boat they bought or the truck they bought or how many houses they have. They talk about that fishing trip they took with their best friend who died 10 years ago, or what their family like. They talk about like the life experiences. That's just really in these past couple years, especially for me. Like I've always had that adventure drive. I go all over the place, but like it's really like tuned it up for me where I'm like I understand now like what's important in life. I think a little more than maybe I did before. I was more worried about making a lot of money and having the $100,000 boat and all that stuff. Now I'm like, no, I want to go see the things that there are to see before they're not there anymore. I want to go catch the fish and see the jungles and all that stuff,
Yeah. That's very interesting. It's funny that you mentioned that. I even had jotted it down, but just didn't cover it. But you're like the 5th guy I've had on here that does that line of work. There's like something to it. There's something about being first responders in general, or working at, any job function where you kind of get the front row seat to somebody's worst day, and it's every day, multiple times per day.
Yeah.
And I got a little bit of that in law enforcement. It's like, man, it's a blessing and a curse. It's kind of sad, but it also, boy, I like the guys that I know that do that. Like all of them is like fishing is their like mode to reset, and it's like they get this opportunity to get deep perspectives and then go and like I don't know, somehow it manifests itself into this awesome experiences in the wild. I had
I think for me it's kind of strange because like you hear about PTSD and you hear about first thing that comes to mind obviously is like military and the soldiers, which is totally valid, understood. Then you think about cops and you think about firemen, right? Like that's also validated, but as a nurse, I see horrible things all the time, right? And my job requires me to be mentally sharp all the time. Like I don't have the opportunity to like just kind of zone out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always in that mode. But like you move that to the fishing and the outdoors, like I'm always still in that mode. But now it's like a totally different feeling for me. Instead of it being like a necessity of life. Now it's like, this is a necessity for my happiness. Like, I'm doing this for me. And it just like, it fuels me to do it even more. And I think that's kind of like, I don't like being sedentary. I don't like being lazy. Like, I don't really want to sit around and watch TV all the time. Like, of course there's a time and place for that, but like, if I got the day off and the weather's nice, like I want to go explore, do something. Like, I want to go put that kind of energy into something else that like is just enjoyable. I think you got to really find that balance. And I know a lot of people want to find more of that balance in your life. And I think a lot of that, there's sacrifices. Like, I wanted a career where I could kind of make my days and make my schedule and have the time to do it. But, my career is definitely not all sunshine and rainbows. Like, I every day I go to work's a hard day,
Yeah.
Not saying other people don't, they definitely do, but that's the trade-off for being able to schedule myself the way I do. And it doesn't really matter anyways, because we're so short staffed on here. I still work 60 hours a week. So.
Yeah.
It was good in theory. Now it's just I work full time.
I have all the respect for the people who do that. I can't tell you how many times I transported somebody to the hospital and like dropped off a problem. It's like, oh, I'm glad that's on y'all now. It's like it gets even worse from here. But I'm
not even kidding. Like, as we've just having this conversation, I'm using my phone. I saw the notification from my hospital drop down asking me to come in tomorrow because we're short staffed. Like, I mean, it is what it is,
Doesn't help there's a big storm out there and people probably aren't driving smart and everybody's having panic attacks. But Dylan, man, I appreciate your time. This was like this is like as good as I wanted it to be. Like, there's so much to cover with a guy like you, with the reptiles, the moves, the international trips, the trips within the same nation. But you couldn't have gone any further from Florida to,
literally
Pacific Northwest, just polar opposite ends of the country. But dude,
I can't wait, man. I can't wait to hear about your trip, and we're definitely gonna have to get back together here soon. And
we are way overdue for a fishing trip. Like, we did the chameleon thing. That's fun. That's cool. But like, we're anglers, you know what I mean? And
we need to go do something serious. I got to get you on a python too, because you got to get that picture. So we got
that's another one. For me, these are one and done type of things. So you don't got to worry about me coming to your python spot and be like, gotcha.
No.
I'm about to bring all my friends now.
Like, but it's funny because like I'm gonna. I got the whole rig on my truck. Like, we're gonna go to like the spot, and we're gonna get you a good one. So,
seriously, let's get something like that planned. I don't want to just mooch off of you though. I got to figure out what I can offer in return, or we just meet on neutral ground and go chase something different together. And we have to figure out the puzzle together.
Man, I would love nothing more, man. Just your friendship alone is enough for me.
Yep.
So.
Well, dude, I know that your Instagram and stuff is buttoned up and tightened up, but maybe people who are listening want to see some of these things, the pythons. We didn't even get into some of the hunts, the hog hunting, all kinds of crazy stuff you do with the fish. But if somebody wanted to like see that stuff, where can they find it?
You can still go to my Instagram. It's danger.dylan. Like, I still accept people. I just leave it private simply because some of the stuff I do, I don't want random news stations and stuff just grab. I just don't really want to wake up one day and see my face on the news again. It's already happened once and be like,
oh no,
who got that and where'd they get it from? So that's it. But you're more welcome to send me a friend request. If you're a fishy guy, I'm sure we'll have something in common. You guys are more than welcome to check my page out.
Yep. Well, awesome, man. I appreciate getting you on here, and we'll be in touch. I'm sure we're local boys. We don't live too far away, so
not at all.
We'll be in touch. But all right, man. You have a good one, all right? And stay safe with all this weather.
You got it, buddy. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Boundless Pursuit. Tune in each week as we bring stories and insight from uniquely talented anglers and outdoorsmen. And if you enjoyed this show, I want to hear from you. Be sure to leave a 5-star review, as this is going to drive the growth and exposure of this show. And if you have feedback or guest suggestions, I would love to hear from you. And you can reach me at boundlesspursuitfishing@gmail.com. For all other collections of media and contact information, please visit www.boundless-pursuit.com.